Okay, I'm going to share Maya. I'm just going to share desktop. Oh, wonderful. Let's go through the Maya interface to begin. We have got our display right here in the center, obviously, and there are a couple of windows that are particularly important. I'm going to move Zoom completely out of the way because it is distracting. So some of the areas that I want to highlight are things like the tools. So we've got tab groups along here with names on them. So we've got curves, surfaces, poly modeling, sculpting, rigging, blah, 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 and so on. You'll mostly be using poly modeling as a beginner. So it'll automatically open with poly modeling there, and you'll know it's poly modeling because of the fact that it's obviously highlighted, but also these classic kind of geometric shapes that you can use as defaults to start modeling. There are also a whole host of other tools along here, and we will go through some of them, but there's also access to all of these tools plus more in all of these drop-down menus, specifically the mesh, edit mesh tools. There is lots of tools to your disposal up there, and we'll go through some of the really useful ones when it comes to basic modeling. We have also got the outliner here. So the outliner is essentially a list of everything in your scene, from mesh to lighting, rigs and curves. Everything will be listed in here, cameras as well. We've also got these little display port setting buttons. So we've just got the regular panel layout. We've got orthographic layout. If we click that, we get the 4 screens. I personally love using this method of having the 4 all at once, just so I can see my model from lots of angles as I go, just to check that I'm doing the right move with what I want to do in that moment. But I flick between both these top 2. So the hotkey for that is just to press spacebar. If you just hit space, it'll pop up, and you've got to be quick with it. Otherwise, if you hold it, you'll get this menu. So if you just pop it like that, you will get the 4 menus, and whatever your mouse is hovering over and you press space again, you will then collapse into that menu. If you're ever lost, just hit space and you'll be able to find your way back. Cool, so let's just go back to that default one. So in the corner here, we have got a handy little cube called, I think, the view cube. And it is a way that you can kind of reset your views. And they're not going to be your orthographic views, but they're going to help you just reset your viewport. A very handy one there. So the way to bring that up and bring it down is just in display. So in display, you can go to heads up display, and it is called the view cube. So you can tick it off or you can tick it on. So display, heads up display, view cube. It's pretty handy, helps reset yourself. What other channels? Oh, so we've got the channel box here. The channel box doesn't look like much right now, but if I put a polygon in there really quickly, we can see there's now some values, and we've got some different options here. So we've got translate, we've got rotate, we've got scale, and we've got visibility. So if you modify any of these, and they are going to correspond to the direction that your shape is in. So with this cube here in the center, we've got X, Y, and Z in the space. So Z is represented by the blue, X is represented by the red, and Y vertical is represented by the green. You'll get more familiar with this as you model, but essentially it is just the 3 kind of directions, and you can reset and modify things very easily by inputting values into the channel box. So I've just completely shrank it to nothing. So I have to put my value as 1, not 0. Otherwise, you won't see anything. So another box that we have along the side here is the attribute editor. Again, it doesn't look like much unless you have something selected. So I have this cube selected, and your attribute editor is kind of like your history of what's happened to this shape. So we've just made the cube and we haven't done anything. So this is in its completely default state. We've got this menu here, which is pretty much the channel box. It's like a replica. We've got these other options here, but mostly I want you to look at the one that's right to the side of it, which is kind of the definition of or the parameters of that that bit of geometry. So yeah, the attributes. So this is where you can control some of these things as well. And it's also where you can control the amount of subdivisions you have. I'm going to show you what I mean by that quickly. If I drop in a cylinder instead, and I'm in the attribute editor, I go to the next tab along, and we can see how many subdivisions we have vertically. We can change that number very easily if we want to start off with a much lower resolution shape. So I can scale it down to 6, and there's just less information for me to have to worry about. So this is a really good way to start modeling, is to reduce the number of subdivisions you have, or start off with very minimal. And a nice even number too. Even numbers are the easiest ones to control. Cool. The attribute editor has got many more things, but for the purposes of basic modeling, I really just wanted to highlight that one tab just to the side when you open it up. We've also got the toolkit window, and that is essentially a little basic tools that you will often use for for just regular modeling, and they're just listed here, some of the common ones that you'll be using. So that's another handy one to have as a beginner off to the side. Cool. So when it comes to navigating in Maya, it can be a real learning curve. You have to use the mouse as well as the keyboard at once. So there are 3 actions you can do. You can rotate, you can pan, and you can zoom. So for rotate, like I'm doing here, which you can see with that grid, and you can see how it's reacting in the box up here. I'm doing that by holding Option on a Mac or Control on a, is it Control or is it Alt? No, I'm having a brain fart. What? For tumbling around, and it's Alt. Yes, thank you. My muscle memory is the only thing that I use, not the brain. So Alt for PC, Option for Mac, and I am using the left mouse to do rotate, middle mouse is to pan, and the right mouse is to zoom. It can be difficult mastering this. It's well worth your time to practice because a lot of the errors that you make as an early beginner are by doing things accidentally. And it's very easy to do things accidentally when you stumble over those hotkeys and you stumble over the navigation tools, because they are very close to, if you've pressed the wrong one, you can open all kinds of menus by accident, and it's so easy to just do things and not know how to undo it. So learning how to tumble around the space is a skill you need to master. Okay, so now that we're a bit familiar with the space, let's start doing some modeling. When you want to do modeling as a beginner, you'll very likely want to be using your reference. So you could have a drawing or a photograph that you've sourced, and you want to bring it into the space so that you can model off of it. What we'll do is just get an image. We're going to model a barrel today, so I'm going to just look up a barrel, a wine barrel to be more specific, or alcohol barrel. I don't know how to spell barrel. And I'm just trying to find a picture that has a fairly kind of front-on view of the barrel itself rather than at an angle. This one here is pretty good. I'm just going to download this one. Before I do that, actually, because I want to actually save that image in the right place so that I can access it many times, what I'm going to do is set my project and save my project. So begin file structure. So the file structure for Maya is very useful. It's going to store everything into these categories, and I'll show you what that is. So we'll start off by going to setting our project. Set the project means this is going to be the location that my entire project is going to be stored under. So for me, it's taking me to this location here, blah, 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 blah. That sounds pretty okay. I'm going to go with set. And I'm going to click create default workspace. Now, if I go to project window, and it's going to give you this list of folders that you're going to be using. So Maya is going to create all of these folders for you to use in your scene. It's going to create them automatically, and then you can store everything within those. So the project name needs to be established. I'm just going to call this one barrel. Why can't I type anymore? It's so bizarre. For some reason I'm unable to type. Oh, because I have to press new first. So you press new, and then I'm going to name it barrel model version 1. And because I've already set the project, the location is already established in below. So I don't need to do that. I can just name my project. So I actually don't need to say VO1. I can just say barrel model. And it's going to create all of these subcategories. And I'll just go accept, and it will have made all of those. The first thing I need to do now, immediately after, is save my scene. So I'm going to go save scene, and it's already taking me to the right folder, which is scenes. If I go up, we can see all of those folders that were created by Maya. So in scenes, I can name it barrel model version 1 and press save. And there we go. Our files are set up. Every time that you move to a new computer, you do not have to take the entire project folder with you. You can just take the scene file. That's okay. It just means that if you want to kind of work up that structure again, you have to do that set project on that new computer. Cool, so we're all saved. What we're going to do is make our reference image. So back in Safari, let's go save image as, and I want to save it in the structure that I've just made. So Maya barrel model. The best place to store pictures like this is just in your images tab. So I'm going to save it in there. I'm just going to press save. Cool. Now what I can do is create a reference image. So up in the create tab, we can just go create free image plane, and it's going to place it in our scene. If we go over to the attribute editor along the side, it'll automatically open us up to the tab that requires us to input the image. And there's a little folder symbol here. So if we click on that, it's going to take us there. So source images is where I could have saved it as well, but I wanted to find it in images. So I'm going to go up there and grab it, and it's going to put it there, right as rain, rescale and everything. If I press space once, we can now see it in the space. In order to make your object that you're focused on or your whole scene kind of come back to itself, you can just press the hotkey F, and it's going to refocus. Sweet, so this is my reference barrel here. I'm going to move it up. So the way to move, rotate and scale are also along the sides here. So we've got move, rotate, scale. their hotkeys are W, E, and F. If you hover over them, you can see the hotkey indicated on the side there. I'm just going to scale it, so move it up so that the barrel is kind of near that grid line. If you want to hide your grid in your viewport, you can just click this grid button here. You can toggle it on and off. Handy if it's getting in your way, but otherwise it's pretty good to have it there. Okay, so let's just start making our shape. So I would probably just approach this as I would in the real world. You'd start off with a cylinder, right? So I'm going to place a cylinder in my space, but I don't want so many subdivisions. So again, we go to the attribute editor, go one tab over, and we can alter the number of subdivisions. I'm going to change it to 12 because 12 duplicates neatly to 24 and so on. It's just a nice kind of example of a duplicable number. So we're just going to 12. All right. So now that we want to manipulate the shape, we want to be in the different kind of component modes. So our geometry, Maya allows you to manipulate geometry in a component level. So you have object, you have edge, you have vertex, and you have actually many others, but you have face as well. What you want to do is, so on your geometry, you just right click and it's hold, right click and hold, and it's going to bring up this wheel. And you can choose face or edge or vertex are the main three that I use. You can use these other ones like multi-tool is sometimes people's preference, but I like to just kind of stay in that kind of structured way. So now I've got my shape. You can see if I click on it, we're going to get the components broken down into faces. So I want to actually delete the top and the bottom of the shape, and that's because they are often with things like cylinders and sometimes circles or planes that are not four-sided, they don't really behave in the best way. So I like to, my preference is to just get rid of them, and I'll add that back later. So what I'm going to do is delete these top faces and the bottom faces. So if I just left click and drag, it's going to create this selection box. And if I hold shift now and drag again, it's going to delete the ones that were in that selection. So I've left behind these top ones. So if I click and drag, it's selecting everything. If I hold shift and drag, it's going to remove the parameters of that selection. So I just want to remove the top, press delete, and I also want to remove the bottom. Now, if I jump back in my perspective view and I tumble around, we can see I don't have caps on my shape. It's just these sides. Cool. So now let's try and create that barrel shape. The best approach to creating shapes that have curvature or really any shape at all is to keep your polygon count well down. Polygons are, the more that you have, the more complicated it's going to be. So I'm going to swap to edge mode. So just right click, edge, double click, and it's going to select that, that loop. And I can use the move tool to drag it up in a rough approximation of where I think the top of the barrel will be, because this barrel image isn't perfectly orthographic, slightly canted. So I'm just kind of making it up. It is a reference after all, I don't have to be super strict with it. Cool, and now I want to scale it. So scale the entire thing so that I have the same kind of dimensions as that barrel. So I've swapped over to face mode, right click, face, and I've double clicked, and it's going to select all the faces that are connected to each other. And in scale, you have got these options to scale more than one direction at once. So if I were to scale using these little anchors, you can see it's doing it one at a time and it's not accurate. It's making it oval instead of a perfect sphere. But these handles have got these little joint scalables. So I can do it these ways and it will do both at once. So if I grab this little green square, it's going to omit using the green anchor. So it's going to scale perfectly circular. If we see in that top-down view, you can see it scaling and keeping its ratio. So I'm going to scale that out till the top of my barrel is about level with the dimensions that I want. And that's it. What I'm going to do now is create that round shape. Now to do that, I want to add some edge loops. Actually, I only want to add one edge loop because you can use a couple of cheats in Maya in order to keep your polygon count way down. So I'm just going to add one edge loop. And to do that, I just want to go up to the Mesh Tools tab, and under Mesh Tools, there is Insert Edge Loop tool. So if I select that and click on one of the existing edges of my geometry, it's going to create this, holding the mouse, the left mouse down, it's creating this green stencil. If I plonk it anywhere, that's fine. I can still change where it is. So I'm going to leave it there. What I want to do is move it to be perfectly centered. To do that, you go to your attribute editor. And like I said earlier, your attribute editor holds the history of your geometry. It's going to hold the things that you've deleted, the changes that you've made, the extra shapes that you've added to it for extruding or whatever. It's going to have it all listed out down there. And there is a way to get rid of that if it's getting too confusing, but I'll show you that later. So I've just gone to the side and I can change the weight value. And the weight value is going to, you can see if I move it along the scale, it's moving its position on the shape. So I'm just going to move it to 5, which is right in the middle between 0 and 1, and it's going to put it right in the center for me. Perfect. That's all. That's the only edge loop that I need to add, because I can use the smooth function. Just quickly, you can see how I was on the edge loop tool, but I now want to move off of it. You have to click off of it with the select tool or something like that. Otherwise, if you're still on the tool, it's going to make more of that loop. It's going to make more of that tool. It's going to duplicate the action. So you need to make sure that you click off like that. Cool. So if I'm still in edge mode, I'll just double click on that edge, and I'm going to scale again in the way that omits the green anchor. And I'm going to pull out my width to meet up with, you know, kind of the edge of the barrel according to my reference image. And now we have this kind of lava lamp shape. It doesn't look like it's a barrel yet, but as soon as we hit smooth, it's going to. So you can toggle between smooth and hard just by using the 1 and the 3 hotkeys. So if I go to 3, you can see it's smooth and rounded the shape, and it's not quite the shape that I want. So if I manipulate it in smooth mode, it's going to do what I want it to do. So still with 3 and not 1, I can do a little bit of altering to create the shape that I want. I want my ends to be slightly narrower. Or do I? Maybe I want them to be fine. Okay, never mind. Cool. So that's my barrel shape. It's coming together nicely. I don't need to add anything else. It's totally fine the way it is. So what I'm going to do now is start to do some extruding and some beveling in order to create that lip. So if we look at the reference image quickly, object mode, I'm just going to press focus and I'm going to jump back in space. You can see with that image, the lip kind of continues straight on a horizontal plane very minimally, and then it goes at a bit of an angle in and then straight down. So I want to recreate that shape. What I'm going to do is grab edge mode again, which is right click, hold and drag it up. Double click on my edge and I'm going to extrude it. So if I just press this button up here, where there's a pillar being lifted up out of the plane, that is extrude. So I'm just going to click on it and I'm immediately going to do nothing, because otherwise you can really mess up your geometry. If I move it around, that's fine. If you're confident with yourself, do that. But you can see how the anchor point is actually at an angle right now. And that's because of the angles of the other shapes. It's taking that information holistically and creating a little calculation about what angle it thinks it should go on. But I don't want it, I want it to go completely straight. So what I'm going to do is, instead of doing anything, I'll click extrude and then immediately press the scale key, which is R. And then it's just going to reset. What I'll do is, still with that open, I'm just going to swap to straight mode real quick, and by pressing 1, just so it's a bit easier to see, I can see now it's coming together totally uniform, totally horizontal. So I want my lip to be pretty small, like the image. I'm going to press extrude again, and I'm immediately going to press scale again. I'm going to take it in, and then I'm going to press W for move, and I'm going to lower it. I'm going to lower it to maybe about there. Actually, I'm going to go back to scale and I'm going to slightly reduce that angle. Cool. And then I can press extrude one more time, click W for move straight away, and then I'm going to bring that geometry down. And we can see, if I tumble over, that it's got that same kind of shape. At this point here, I don't think that I need my reference image at the moment. So what I'm going to do is hide it, because it's kind of getting in my way. If I go over to the outliner and click on the image plane 1, I can just press H to hide it, and you'll see it's been grayed out now. If I want to reveal it again, you can just click on it and press H again, but I'm just going to hide it, and I can now look at my object uninterrupted. So now that I have this lip shape happening here, but I still want to have that nice curvature, what I need to do is add some more edge loops. If I go to 3, you can see that the smooth function really just gets rid of all of that nice hard edge information that we had on the barrel, which I wanted to keep. So in order to preserve those angles, but still have a smoothed object that has roundness, we need to add edge loops very close to each other. So back in mesh tools and insert edge loop, I'm going to add some loops very close to the lines of my geometry without touching them, but getting quite close. If they touch, it can really trip you up later. So try not to let them touch completely, but just get it close enough that you can see that there's a bit of a gap. And I'm going to do that on kind of all of the edges that I want to be straight on either side of that edge. So I'm going to tumble around, and I want to add one to this one. I want to add one to this one. I want to add one to that one. So the reason I'm not going to add it to this bottom one is because there's no geometry that continues. If there's no geometry to continue, the edge will stay hard. I'll show you. So if I go to 3, you can see it's still hard. Now that I'm in 3, you can see that the proximity of those edges has shifted a little bit, but it's still maintaining that relatively hard edge. It takes some getting used to see, to visualize where your loops have moved to when you swap from 1 to 3. But essentially it's all the exact same information. It's just shifted slightly to create that smooth. But now we've got those nice clean edges. If I go press F and zoom out, we can see it with more clarity. I'm just going to go to object mode and click move to disable my edge loop tool. And we can see, even though it's smooth, we still have those really nice hard edges. Perfect. That's exactly what I want. What I can do is add some grooves to create those panels that you see with a barrel, how it's got those independent strips of wood. For the top and the bottom are typically independent pieces of wood which have different structures. So I don't actually need to create the holes. I don't need to fill those holes anymore, but I will show you how to fill the hole just in case you want to take that approach. So what we can do is go back to edge mode. I'm going to double click on the bottom edge, which I need to zoom in to do because it's evading me. Cool, so I can zoom in there. I'm just going to jump back to 1 quickly. And what we can do is extrude from there. So I'm going to press extrude, immediately jump to scale, and I'm going to bring it in. And what I'm going to do is do that one more time, and I'll explain why soon. So I'm going to press extrude again, scale, zoom in one more time. And what I'm going to do now is with this edge loop is hold shift and right click, and I'm going up 1 to merge edges, and then I'm going merge edges to center, and it's going to collapse all those edges down and join them together into one vert. So if I'm in vertex mode, the little pink dot is a vertex. Zoom out. So the reason that I didn't just do it, do that extrusion once and then collapse that was because it would have created those triangles all the way to the edge, and it makes it really, your life really difficult if you don't have loops with circles. It's really dumb and it's annoying. So I recommend always having access to being able to create loops, because without them, I wouldn't be able to do things like click, hold shift, click, and then double click, and it's grabbing my whole loop. If you do that in the center where they share a common vertex, it's not going to do it. It's really weird, but you know, that's just the way it is. So what I want to do now is double click on this edge, and I'm going to hold shift, right click, and I'm going to click detach components. So what that's done is created a severance at that edge, and it has separated these two things. So now my barrel is independent of my lid. What I can do now a step further is take this lid and actually make it a completely separate object in my outliner. So I'm going to highlight the whole thing. I'm going to shift, right click and hold, and I'm going down to extract faces. And what that's going to do is over in the outliner, it's going to create a little history for us there, and it's got a new folder, and our 2 bits of geometry are nested underneath that folder. So what I can do is drag them out of there by holding shift and clicking both of those. I then hold down the middle mouse scroll and drag them out. And I'm just going to drag them up, and now they're out of that box. And I can see them. I can delete that history now by just selecting that group and deleting it. Now I have these 2 independent objects, which is going to be really handy when it comes to doing things like texturing and modeling those grooves, because if the whole thing was complete, it would just make it really hard to work efficiently. Back to edge, I'm just going to fill this hole here. So another option is to just use fill hole. If you grab the edges of the hole and then shift right click, you can go down to fill hole, and it's just going to create a flat plane with no vertices. So that's another option. And if I do the exact same technique, I can detach it. So I can just go to extract faces straight away, and it's now a new piece of geometry in my outliner. I'm going to grab those, and I'm going to drag them out. I'm going to delete that. And now I have 3 objects, and you can see what object you have selected by the green outline. Oh, now if I smooth that, and smooth that. Oh, you can't smooth that because it has no information in it. But anyway, if I smooth these ones, you can see that they've still got that alignment because I've detached from the whole piece. They've kept the same vertex information, so they're totally snug, which is really nice. So let's create some bevels. I'm just going to do it with one, just because we've only got 20 minutes remaining. So I'm just going to double click on a edge and I'm going to bevel these. So to bevel, you just click whatever you want to bevel, and then you go up to this symbol just two along from extrude called bevel components. If you click on that, it's going to come up with this little window, and you can change the value. So I want to change the fraction to be very small because I want to create those little slithers where the wood has been pressed together. I want it to be really, really tiny. So I'm going to go 0.03. See how that looks. Still too small. I'm going to go 0.003. Oh, why is it being funny? I'm just going to undo real quickly. Let me try that again. But this time I'm going to do it in the channel box. So in the channel box, I'm going to change my offset value. Cool, so I'm going to change my fraction, my offset. I'm going to change my fraction. Not so small. Why it's being so funny. But what I can do is a slightly different method. Cool, I'm just going to do one at a time now and see if it's different. Yeah, that's so annoying. I don't know why it's doing that. Let's go undo. What I'm going to do instead is extrude the edge. No, that's dumb too. All right, new method. Sometimes with modeling, you have to kind of play around with how you're going to approach this. So what I'm going to do instead is separate these strips. So I'm going to grab this and I'm going to extrude the face. And I'm going to change the thickness. No, not the thickness, the offset. Oh, you know what? It's because I've been in smooth mode. Let's go undo. And let's try again. Not in smooth. That's why it was being so strange. Now, if we bevel, we can actually change it. Cool, so 0.03. That's nice and small. You can kind of make it how small you want, but we'll just stick with this for now, just to show you. And you could delete this if you want to have those gaps. Depending on how small your gap is, it might look good. Or you can do some extruding where you extrude in. It's kind of up to you the direction that you want to go with something like this. But if I wanted to see how it looks all smooth, it will still look just as smooth as the rest, as long as you don't change the vertical information, the loops. Cool. So that's how you would do that, maybe all the way around. All right, let's get into making rope. So if you want to create, actually it's really not just for rope, really anything. You can make archways, you can make all kinds of stuff, and I'll show you a couple examples. What you want to do is use curves. So with curves, you go up to create, curve tools, CV curve tool, and let's make a couple things. So let's make a rope first. So I'm just going to plot some points, and once you get to your third or fourth point, you see the curves start to emerge. All of these points are totally manipulatable. You can manipulate them after the fact. You can even manipulate them once you've attached your geometry as well. So it's very, very versatile. I'll show you how to manipulate them. So I've created this rope, but I want to change its angles. I want to rough it up a little bit. So I just grab it and I right click, change to control vertex, and it's going to show me those little plotted points that I made. And you can grab them and move them around, and that is how you can adjust your curve after you have created it, like thus. All right, and now if you want to create the kind of rope itself, let's create a bit of geometry. So for a rope, we'll want a round piece of geometry. So I'm going to create a just standard polygon disc. It's just going to be a one-sided flat disc. If I press F, we can come here and see it. I don't want yet to have this much information, so I'm going to go to my attribute editor, and I'm going to change these values to 2, just so that it's a little bit more manageable. Not that it really matters too much. Now, the diameter of this shape is going to be the diameter of the start of your rope. So you want to make sure that this is the size that you want. So I'm going to scale it down a little bit. Yeah, that'll probably be fine. And in order to make this follow along the curve, you just go to face mode. You select all of the faces, you shift and left click onto the curve. And then you just go shift, right click, extrude face. And what it's done here is it's extruded right to the end of the curve. So you've got one face on one end of the curve, and then the other face has extruded itself to the other curve. What we want to do now is create segments so that it flows along. And to do that, you just either use this box or you go to the channel box editor and you can add divisions. So I'm going to add way more divisions, and you can see it's following along there. What you can also do is change things like the taper. So you can have it taper to get smaller or thicker. And you can add twist, so you can twist it as it goes. I'll show you that on a bigger scale. Object mode. Another thing is, if you want to see your geometry with wireframe, but also don't want it to be like this, you can just choose this option, a few along, just here, and that's going to show you both at the same time. And that way you can just kind of see how your geometry is looking at that moment. So let's make another curve and make maybe a really grand archway. So create, curve tools, CV curve tool, and let's go to orthographic mode and plot the point. If you try to create a curve and the extrusion isn't behaving the way you want it to, and it creates this long beginning extrusion separate to all of your really nice segments, that's because you need to align your piece of geometry, your flat disk or your flat plane, you need to align it to the beginning of the curve. If you align it to the end of the curve, it's going to snap itself back over to the beginning. That's kind of hard to visualize, so I'll just demonstrate it for you. So let's make this curve, make a nice shape like that. Cool. Now I'm going to make a plane again, but this time I'll just make a cube, a square one. It's made it at value 0, so that's why I can't see it. But if I press, oh wait, I didn't actually make it, that's why. So I'll make it. Now I've got this cube. I'm just going to scale it up so we can see it a bit better. Attribute editor, second tab along, and I'm going to change its subdivisions to be 1, 1. And now it's just one four-sided shape. I'm going to move it to the beginning of my, actually to show you, to demonstrate to you what it does wrong. If I move it to the end of my curve, go to face, grab the face, shift click on the curve, shift right click, extrude face, and then I add dimensions, divisions, you can see how it snaps along to the end. So that's not what I want. I want it to start at the beginning and go to the end. So I'm just going to press undo, undo, undo. If you're not sure what you're undoing, you can actually read the action of everything that you're undoing at the in the bottom here. So I can actually track back the different stages that I've done. So I'm going to move it along, face, shift right click, shift left click on there, shift right click to extrude. And now if I add my divisions, it's going to be paved the way that I want. And I'm going to add some taper, make it nice and wide, and then I'm going to twist it to like 60 so I get a nice kind of curve. And that is how you do some really cool stuff like that. Yeah, this is all manipulatable after the fact. So if I go to the curve that this belongs to, which in the outliner is curve 2, because it's the second curve that I created in the scene. You can also name all of these, by the way. If I click on that curve and I want to change it, I just hit return and it comes up with the editable option, and I'll just name it there. It's really good to keep a clean outliner to really save you some time. So I want this curve here. What I can do, if I can't see it, to click on it and get to that, that different mode where I can change things, I'm going to actually hide this geometry. So I'm going to hide P plane 2 just by pressing H again. And now I can click on it and I can control the vertex. And if I click on here, I can reveal it again. Oh, no, I can't because I have to do that first. Cool. So let's just control vertex. And I can change these. Another thing I could do if I wanted to see my geometry at the same time, what I can do is reveal it again. And I can delete the end face or faces. And it's going to be a bit tricky to spot, but it's in there. If I go to object mode and I click in there, I can click on my curve and I can go to that control vertex mode and click on my points and change them. And you can see that it's changing the entire curve as well as its parented child geometry. Yeah, very cool, very useful. Yeah, those are all of the basic functions that you need to know, the basic tools that you need to know to create your first shapes. The more familiar you get with Maya, the more confident you are to explore new tools. You'll be surprised about how little you need to actually create. See you later, Jocelyn. It's in terms of the geometry, it can be really uncomplicated. Like this barrel we've created with just a single edge loop to create that curvature. The less information that you have, the it's just going to be so much easier to manipulate and change things, and it'll keep your geometry nice and clean. If you ever do need to get rid of any geometry, best practice is to remove it so that the vertex is gone as well. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So if I want to remove this middle band, instead of just pressing delete, and if I go to vertex mode, you can see why. So I've pressed delete and it's left behind all of these vertexes that are creating these little puckers. So I haven't actually deleted the edge at all. It's still there technically. So I'm just going to undo, it's still there. But if you want to remove it and get rid of the vertex, you hold shift, you right click, and then you click delete edge. And that's going to remove the edge and the vertex. So keeping your geometry nice and clean is definitely the way to go. We have some quick time to do a Boolean. So I'm going to show you how to do a Boolean. My advice is not to do a Boolean where possible, because they just result in messy geometry. It is best to model around a hole, but if you really just want to, punch a hole through something or some kind of divide, I will show you how to do that.
If it's not going to move and you don't have to texture it,
yeah,
it's fine.
It's fine. It can just mess with the polygon counts. Not polygon count. I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so what I've got here is this little, I'm going to make a little hole in my shape. What I want to do is, if you've got multiple holes that you're wanting to create all at once, you're going to need to combine them. I'll show you how to do that too. So I'm just going to duplicate this shape really quickly by pressing Command D or Control D. And I'm going to shrink it so that it's obviously different. I can't Boolean these independently. I have to combine the shapes. So I'm going to click and select both of them, shift, right click, and go down to combine. And now they're the same bit of geometry in the outliner. I can Boolean those at the same time. So what you want to do is have everything smooth and ready to go. So if I want to punch out a hole into this barrel but keep it smooth, I need to permanently smooth it. So before, when we press 1 and 3, we're just temporarily jumping between them. If I want to do it permanently, you have to hold shift, right click, and then go to smooth. And if I hit 1 and be in straight mode, you can see it's kept that nice curvature and it's added all of those divisions. So you can only Boolean in 1 in straight, you can't do it in smooth. So the order to Boolean is to grab your object and then your Booleans, go over to, hold on a second, go over to mesh. Oh no, we can just go modify Boolean. So mesh, Boolean, difference, and it's going to punch out those holes. And because my Booleans actually had caps at the end, it's kept those caps. So that's a bit annoying. But if I undo it and deleted those caps, it would just hollow it out. So I'm going to do that quickly. Just going to move these out. Face, grab those faces, delete. Cool. And now I'm going to move it back in. Flop. Grab that, mesh, Boolean, difference, and now it's just punched a hole out. See, it's gone clean through. So if I were to smooth this at the moment, you'd see it's looking like nightmare fuel. So we can, what's happening there is that there's just too many vertexes belonging to this one polygon. So if I go to vertex mode, you can see all of those verts along with those ones, and it's just, Maya doesn't like it. It do not like, so we have to clean that up. So the way that we can do that is to grab your mesh, go to mesh, go to modify, down to mesh. Oh, here we go, mesh. We go down to mesh, mesh cleanup, and you click on this box. And we want to change it to select matching polygons and then faces with more than 4 sides. And it's going to find all of the polygons that have more than 4 vertices. And I'm just going to press apply. Oh, wait, hold on, I need to go. Don't want to change it to select matching. I just want to do cleanup matching. So if you have it on select matching polygons and then faces with 4 sides and press apply, it's given these polygons some new information. So now if I press 1, it's not, well, it's still kind of crazy, but it's slightly better than before. This is the reason why it's not really recommended to use Booleans, but in cases of emergency, you know, it's fine. If I'm not going to smooth this, it looks all good. If I turn off that viewport thing, yeah, it looks okay. But my recommendation is to just model the circle and go from there. Cool, so those are all of the basic things that you should know and practice to do some modeling in Maya, and play around with the navigation in particular, because that's the main thing. Awesome, all right, have fun.